All right, Jackets, hope you enjoyed that special presentation of the 04 game versus Clemson on ACC Digital Network. Had to bring in your friend and mine, Wes Durham, to share his recollections of that night in Death Valley. Wes, how are you?
I'm great, Andy. It's good to be with you.
Is that night still as vivid now as it was back then?
Well, it is for me because my wife, Vicky, who used to work in the golf program at Georgia Tech, it's her favorite game ever. The play at the end, the whole bit. So she reminds me of it a lot, and we talk about the play and that night. And it's the night she put me in the Hall of Fame. She gave the presentation speech, and she called it's her favorite call. So the game is fresh to me. The moment at the end is fresh to me. I also remember that Clemson threw into the end zone on the final play of the game too.
Yeah.
To think about what might have happened, but to think that it was we're coming up on 16 years ago. That's the part that's scary. Is how fast time has flown since that ball game in 2004.
Yeah, no question. Part of the fun job of being a play-by-play voice, as you know, is we get to watch practice, we get to witness things that otherwise would be closed off. When did you first know in the preseason, yeah, this Calvin guy, he's going to be pretty good pretty fast?
Well, I don't know that I knew before the players knew because the off-season summer workouts, in fact, this time of year, in the summertime in athletics and even in athletic administration, it's pretty quiet time. So you're in the office a handful of hours a week as opposed to every day on the grind, right? And so I remember sitting in my office sometime in, God, I want to say like third week of June of 2004. And James Butler, who was going to be a veteran on that team, a safety, who later went on and played with the New York Giants and won a Super Bowl, came by the office. And we were just talking and catching up a little bit on the offseason. I said, well, how the workouts been? He said, pretty good. And I said, any of the freshmen catch your eye? And he didn't say anything. He looked up and he said, the wide receiver is the real deal. And I said, you mean Calvin Johnson? He goes, well, everybody hyped him up, but he's the real deal. And I said, like, a real deal? He said, Wes, he'll be the best wide receiver the ACC has next year. And this is a guy who had played in the league, right, Andy, 2-3 years, and already had a sense of who was in the league. And he was telling me that Calvin Johnson was going to be the best wide receiver in the ACC as a freshman. And I'm like, JB, he goes, I'm telling you, he's the real deal. And I just kind of let it go from there because, and I know you've probably had the experience as well, when a player tells you how good somebody else is before you see that guy play, you got a pretty good indication that the guy might be really good. Now, did we think it would be Calvin Johnson? No, but we thought that Calvin Johnson would be pretty good. And Chan Gailey told me the first week of practice that he was going to get the first play of the first game. And sure enough, when they opened against Samford the week before, the first play from scrimmage, they threw the ball to Calvin Johnson. And so I think we kind of knew early, but we had no idea how he would handle the road. And that was what was so really amazing about the Clemson ball game in 04.
What was the atmosphere like after the botched punt at the end? Like, we've been in a lot of stadiums before, but rarely do you see the atmosphere change so instantaneously like I'm sure it did after that muffed punt.
Well, fortunately, the folks who watched the broadcast tonight on ACC Digital heard Brent Musburger and Todd Blackledge do the game because I was talking on the air prior to the Cole Chasen punt about how much time was left and how many timeouts Georgia Tech had and if they got the ball. Remember, they had just gone down and scored moments earlier on the throw in the other corner of the end zone to Calvin. And I thought to myself, okay, they've got a couple of timeouts. They're going to have approximately X number of seconds. And Jeff Van Note was doing the games with me then and said, yeah, you like the way the offenses got their momentum, da-da-da. We'll see where the punt goes. What kind of return do they get? And then all of a sudden I look up and Jeff Rigsby has rolled the punt back to Cole Chasen. And that's why my call is so startling because I look up and I'm expecting the normal snap like we all do. And it's a valuable lesson to broadcasters. Always pay attention, to even what you think might be rudimentary. And Rigsby had rolled the snap back there. And then there was no doubt in the building where the ball was going to go when Georgia Tech had it first down because I think to your point, the wind and the breath of the building just left. Clemson thought they were going to win the game. The snap gets rolled back there, and every Tiger fan feared what was going to happen. It's like they knew they were walking to the gallows with Calvin Johnson. And that's what happened. They put their best corner on him. I mean, they put Justin Miller, who later was a fairly significant draft pick in the NFL by the New York Jets, who was a 5-star this and all that coming out of high school. And they put Justin Miller on him one-on-one, and Reggie looked at Calvin, and everybody knew where the ball was going. But the momentum in the building was gone the minute the punt got rolled back because they knew what was going to happen.
Yeah. And naturally, Calvin gets a lot of accolades for that final catch and his other 2 touchdowns. But the Reggie ball, I mean, that pass was a thing of beauty as well. And that wasn't the only great pass that Reggie had that night either.
No, he threw some great balls that night. I mean, he hit Levon Thomas on an unbelievable throw for a touchdown. I thought the first one to Calvin, the first touchdown Calvin caught of the night, was a spectacular throw too. And so Reggie did have a really good night. The thing about the fade at the end, Andy, was it's something they worked on all the time. I mean, Chan Gailey had great foresight about how he thought Calvin would be covered. I'm guessing this came from working with guys in the NFL. I mean, they'd have drills in practice where they'd run goal line fades, and Chan would have John Tenuta put 2 or 3 guys over there on Calvin at once. So when it was only Justin Miller, it was, Calvin 6'5". He was legit 220, 225 as a freshman. And, it was a layup, in all honesty, to what was going to happen, I think.
Yeah. As broadcasters, we sometimes recognize right away that we just watched a classic game and we had a classic call for it. Sometimes that realization takes a while to sink in. I'm curious, did you know when you left the booth that night that this was a game that will live forever in the minds and hearts of Georgia Tech fans, and that my call is going to stand the test of time as well?
No, I'd be fooling myself if I told you I thought I did. I thought it was a great game. I thought it was a great win, an incredible win, because time and again you thought, those games just don't happen like that, right? I had no idea. Number one, I don't know if you feel the same way. Sometimes when you have calls like that, you don't really remember what you say, and you hope you don't screw it up.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah, and so when I was able to hear a replay of the call, I felt okay. We lost our mind a little bit, but that was okay. And Jeff Van Note was tremendous in the call with me, and that was awesome experience to be working with Noter that time as well. But did I think that it would be one of the 2 or 3 things that everybody remembers about my 18-year career at Georgia Tech? No, but I'm glad they do, because he was a spectacular player. Pound for pound, I think he's the greatest player in Georgia Tech history. I still do. And, I feel like we did a fair to above average job of capturing the moment of a great win. And it was special. It was special to watch him. And after the game, I remember asking him, "This is pretty good for your first college road game. What have you got next?" I mean, that was his first college road game, and he caught 3 touchdown passes and a game winner in just a remarkable ball game. And when you think about it, though, it really set the stage for all the stuff he did in his career. I mean, later in the year was the Spider-Man catch. I mean, everything he ever did. A year later was the catch at Auburn to open the year to win the game. On the first drive, he caught that unbelievable ball from Reggie. Then the shoe top stuff against Miami later in the year at the Orange Bowl. I mean, it was really the birth of Calvin Johnson on the national college football scene.
As a wise man once said, he absolutely lived up to the legendary billing. Two last questions, Wes. Broadcaster. That year, how many times per week did somebody come up to you and say, "Son of a gun"?
Not as often as you'd think.
Okay.
Now, there is a friend of mine in this business who said, "You said son of a gun because you almost said something else." And I said, "No, I didn't, but that's another story for another time."
All right, and finally, I've been dying to know this. In the background of your call, who was the person in the booth cackling maniacally after Calvin's catch?
You know who it was. Legendary producer-engineer Miller Pope.
It was.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
He was one of my prime suspects.
Well, he's also been caught on the Kerry Watkins one-hand catch in 2000 that George Godsey threw. He's also been caught on a couple of Tech Georgia calls in the 2008 game. But Miller Pope, who's probably forgotten more Georgia Tech football than you, me, and Brandon Gaudin have seen together, and I'm not kidding, Miller is the one who is cackling in the background. Yes, there's no doubt.
And my suspicions were confirmed. We love Miller.
Yeah,
You got a great
absolutely.
view of it. You had a great call of it. And I think we all had a great trip down memory lane tonight watching the game in 2004. And look forward to putting total leather and opening the season versus Clemson here in September. Wes, man, we appreciate the time.
Anytime, Andy. Thank you.